Mixed messages, mixed messages, mixed messages, mixed messages, mixed messages, mixed messages. How do you feel about it now, 20 years later? I mean, how do you feel about what you built?
Look, where I'm at, my wife and I have built a number of businesses.
Tell us about some. What's life like with you and Brandy now?
It's cray-cray. It's always cray-cray. We have a lot going on. But I mean, we built 2 online radio networks. We built 2 trade shows. We've just recently raised $7 million to go buy the former Budweiser distribution plant in Arizona and attached a marijuana license to it to go cultivate and make finished products and, sell weed legally.
Right.
Not like I'm not an imbiber of the herbal lubrication. I enjoy it. But
these are no small ventures, like you said, and things that you never even maybe imagined before you and her became partners.
The amazing thing is my wife has been at the center of all this.
Yeah.
Our next project, we're in the middle of right now of getting a Broadway play funded, the whole franchise, movie, London, New York. This is just an example of we want to keep ourselves entertained. We want to do good works while making money and living life on our terms.
How do you design your relationship? Like, it sounds like you've been able to design it in a way, but is it based on how you want to live, your lifestyle? Is it based on your skill sets that you had, making most use of them? Is it based on, how does, kind of what is the framework of which you guys operate in as, business partners and mates? You know what I mean?
I don't know that we gave that a conscious thought so much as it was playing on the momentum of things built at that time, right? And I think when you're at a crossroads, we found ourselves at the beginning of COVID, like a lot of people did. And then most recently, probably 6 weeks ago, when we decided to shift gears and jump onto the Broadway bandwagon and go secure that property. I think when, or at least we do, I think when we want to shift gears. And I think like anybody, you can get tired of doing something after a while. One of our radio networks is 17 years old. We've been doing that a long time.
Right. Exactly, yeah.
And internet dog years, that's, totally, like
lifetime.
Tyrannosaurs were wandering the earth.
Seriously.
I think for us, we're unique in that I think we just we fell in together and fit like 2 peas in a pod. And as long as we were together,
everything was better, right?
It was better. Yeah. And anything that we
easier
did,
even, or you would handle the hard together and it was together. Yeah.
I think looking back on it now, it pains me to think if I had to do it without her. That thought rips me in half. Couldn't imagine it. Couldn't imagine.
Totally, couldn't imagine. Now, I guess it begs the question, would you call that true love, or would you call it luck and timing?
No, there was no luck in this because there were far too many signs that illuminated the fact that we were right where we were meant to be when we were meant to be. And do I wish it were sooner? Sure. Do I wish I could still keep my kids?
Right.
And all that? Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. But just even now, as the lightning struck now and to now, it sounds to me like it is an actual true love story.
Oh, her and I talk all the time about the fact that we know we've been together for many lifetimes. This is not new. This is not new at all.
Yeah.
We know this. I mean, I feel it. She feels it. From time to time, she will joke and say that I was her wife in a past life.
I can see her say that.
That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
and
think
you guys do make a good duo too in public, and as well. Like you got your sanctuary, and and headquarters in the bedroom where you can speak honestly and candidly, and and then you have your public personas, and you're both the mild laid low with your dearest friends to the if you got to pimp and poet up in a huge conference or whatever, you do it,
yeah,
right? You put the whole thing on, do the outfits, and go out there and rock it like it's hot together, right? So you have that range, So there's a range,
It's a wide range.
right? You have a lot of depth in your relationship, right? As you're saying, partly from all that sincerity and candor and trust and over the years and the ingredients of how that seasoned you guys, right? You know, you both have immense capacity as human beings individually. And so your collective capacity together just makes it, like you said, well, 1 + 1 = 3. It's better. Everything's more fueled. Everything has more potential. Everything can be calculated and passed off and divvied to and all that, right? Now, on the other side of the coin, like separate from finishing each other's sentences, this show also talks about self-sabotage and kind of the mixed messages that occur in relationships, whether they be confrontations with ourselves or whether they be within the relationship or both, and kind of how we be very honest about those and how we've navigated in some of those waters and kind of to help other people kind of remove those from the equation. Because I kind of think a good life is not so much about getting more, a good life or a good relationship is about removing the obstacles so you can be the clutter, so you can be your best way with each other, or even the big boulders, right? So would you say that you and Brandy ever experienced any kind of mixed messaging, self-sabotage, or mixed wiring? Or
Oh my God, all the time. Yeah, sure. Look, I think because we're surrounded by energy that influences us all the time. We can be influenced by our kids. We can be influenced by, other people that we're working with on our jobs. And so we carry that back home, right? We have that in our relationships, and that's anxieties and stresses and other issues and whatever that you find that you need to deal with and cope with. And so I think comes other insecurities that will rear their ugly heads in ways that, God, are far too many to even try and articulate, but they will pop themselves up, and then that'll spawn maybe a heated discussion that might turn to a fight, and then, slam door, and 5 minutes later, hey, let's go get some ice cream.
I was just going to ask, like, how do you recover from those, right? I mean, everybody else
used to not very well at all. And I think I came to the conclusion, and I've no fact to base this on whatsoever. It's just my personal belief that where we grow up regionally, I think affects or impacts how we raise our kids and teach them to deal with certain things. In the South, we collectively, speaking for a lot of the Southerners I know in Texas and what have you, we sweep shit under the rug.
Right. And you're a Southerner.
And I'm a Southerner.
And Brandy is?
She is a Northeasterner, New Englander. She's a Northerner.
Yeah.
How
exactly.
North met South was, woo.
That's another point. I just wanted to bring that out.
It is a point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was a thing for us. She had a very different fighting style. And, my fighting style was like, we'd yell and whatever, no. Or it would be no yell. Right? Like
silence, right? Or
just non-confrontational, just shut down. And for me, that was like at the beginning, it was the shut down. And in my mind, I'm like, this is unhealthy.
Right.
Yelling and screaming, this is unhealthy. This is going to lead to something bad. Like I've been through 2 divorces. I don't want...
I know where this is going. And like you said, our upbringing, we kind of have a systematic set of kind of
different rules. Exactly.
And Brandy breaks all rules if she wants to too.
Breaks all the rules.
All of them. Every one of them.
And so from her side of the fence, she was accustomed to that yell, scream, slam door, 5 minutes later, let's go get ice cream.
I see.
And so when we got together, she was completely like, why the fuck are you clamming up? Why, I can't deal with that.
Right.
And she would come at me like,
all knives a swing and just she needs your
like,
love and she needs you to be able to man in this.
Oh my God.
Right? Yeah.
Like, you need to get out of, that shell. Like deal with this.
We're going to walk through this. Yeah.
And so I will say it probably took me 2 or 3 years to really wrap my head around the fact that the yelling and screaming thing isn't necessarily a bad thing. It was how she was raised in her family environment to deal with at that moment.
To overcome.
It wasn't toxic. It wasn't toxic.
No, she had the goal to overcome.
That was her thing. They get it out. And then, okay, we're family, because guess what? That's what families do. Like, we can yell and scream at each other, but we're always going to be here for each other. So now that we're over that shit.
Yep.
Next.
What's next?
And so I think once I got to that point, I realized, okay, I can stay in this. she's not going anywhere.
Right. You don't have to have all those feelings of coming up and the resistance. I mean, so you're saying, and I wanted to ask a question, was it resistance? I mean, that you were having before? I mean, natural resistance, or was it, what took 2 or 3 years to come to that point? I mean, I know relationships.
I think conditioning as a child, like I just shut down in those, because I looked at that as, what comes next is the end. Right. And I don't want the end.
The end. These fights are going to lead to an end, and I don't want the end to happen.
I don't want to lend energy.
Yeah, or fuel this at all.
Yeah, exactly. And so
then you were navigating some of this, obviously. Yeah,
and what was wrong about that was I wasn't allowing myself to enter into that communion, whether it was a loud communion or not, right? With some feelings in there. But feelings is what we're all made up, right? And what, mixed or not, this is what it is. And so I think in that moment, when I realized I could let myself into that, and although I'm not comfortable in there, I'm not, but because I love my wife, and that's where, and if she's frustrated and like I got to be in there.
I want to be on the side of this regardless. Yeah.
It was an issue if I turned around and walked away. And for her, that hurt.
And probably triggered.
It did, because it was, if you loved me, you'll stay in this.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Head to head,
and
toe to toe.
My point of view was,
I'm not going to fuel this.
I'm not going to throw fuel into something that's negative. When we calm down and we can talk logically, then we can have a productive conversation.
Right. But we have different genders too. So now that doesn't always work.
We got different genders. I'm coming in from logically. She's coming at it emotionally.
And you're the Southern boy, and she's the New Englander. Right.
So men are from Mars,
Southern
women
boy,
are from Venus.
That's right. And so the Southern boy eventually, decides to say, you know what? I'm going to open up.
I'm going to come in.
I'm going to listen. And, this is going to bounce off of me. I know I don't have to be afraid of my wife's volume and her tempo and her fire.
Because she loves me. She's not going anywhere.
She's not going anywhere. We're going to fix this. And so now you're like, okay, well, what's so hard about this, right? So now you can.
Don't get me wrong. It's still hard.
I'm not going to say. I was just going to ask the question, right? So, but did that soften those fights at all, or she's still that, and you're now just so much more comfortable with it, and she loves it and gets it out, or is it less? Or was there any moment where it became less? I'm just curious if it changed her at all.
Well, yeah, I think it changed the dynamic of it more, because
as you're more present, you can walk through it and let her, about what changed her. What
it took one step of that, that mess that would get created. I would always throw one more log onto it by withdrawing. And so that would cause one more problem, right? So instead of one problem, I had two, right? And so when I realized, okay, I can minimize the problems, and I have to stay in it. And so part of that is recognizing my partner is having some feelings in that moment, and she has to get it out. If she can't get that out, that's a problem, and she's got to get it all out. And so I have to stay in that.
Or even witnesses. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you, and you're literally like a sideline, right? I've seen it, right? Or you're not trying to solve her from getting out of it. It's like she's going to get this through. You've looked at me and go, nope, you can't do nothing. Sit back.
No,
she's
just got to let it go, right? Yeah. That's also, I think, a part of knowing your partner and what they need. If you love and respect them, then you give them what they need in that, right? And sometimes that's just they need an ear. They just need you to shut up and listen. Whether or not you can do anything about it or not, like sometimes it's just about you being there and hearing it. But I think the biggest takeaway in all that is when you man up and you get in it, you're in it. And it's recognized that you're in it now. And she recognized that I've been in it now for years. For years. And when you're in it, then you're getting on the same page.
It's living and breathing. It's your blood. It's just flowing, right? And if, did you guys ever consider breaking up any time in this process? 20 years? Ever stop and just say, nope, this isn't going to work, even if it was temporary?
Oh God, I think like any couple, there have been fleeting moments of what if, right? But I think those were
emotionally charged and random and very few in between.
look, I think I think we probably both had that thought at least once.
Yeah.
At least
Right.
once.
Right. I'm trying to dispel the whole ride or die thing too, right? Like even a ride or die. And now you have true love and a ride or die relationship. Everybody knows there's been struggles, but was there, a few times or once, like you said, that you thought things are tough enough that we won't make it?
I think, like everybody, we've all had that moment where we've gone out the front door, right? We've gotten in the car, gotten down the street, whatever, needed to take an hour, two, right? Whatever. I mean, and we're no different. We've absolutely had those moments, but it never got past that. Neither one of us ever said, okay, we're going to go, like, we're going to formally separate it. I think you get 20 years in and we are so tied together.
Well, you open the show with, I can't imagine my life without her now. And then I look back at my last 20 years and can't imagine what my life would be without her then.
Absolutely not.
So, yeah, I mean, you're in it to win it forever. This is it. This is done.
For me, I know this was my soulmate, right? So I know, as I've said, like this has been many lifetimes. I know there's many more to come. So I think that was also the answer to my first relationships. Of course, they weren't right.
Yeah, they were in the way. You had your soulmate in this lifetime. It was coming. She was coming, and you guys were going to meet no matter what. You got some children. What's funny you mention that because when I was first coming out of the divorce, and you were there. I mean, I was a mess, right? We're talking about a dark era,
it was.
Right? And you've seen me through a few, right? And so, and that's why I'm on this show too. To like be as candid as I can about that kind of humanity in life. And appreciate you doing that with me here today too, and being so candid and vulnerable and truthful. But when I was going through that and kind of coming out, and now all of a sudden I was out of the underbelly of it, and I had a new little house in Florida and Davis Island there, and kids were now down there with me, right, on the water. We got Seva, the notorious Seva. Brandy loved Seva. There was no better dog in the world.
God bless that dog.
Yeah, so we were down there, and I felt like we were healing, and we were a good year out of the whole thing, and the kids were good. I felt good, right? I felt like I was like through the hardest of it all, both the real world and the inner world, right? But there was obviously continued waves of grief. And so I remember asking, like, this all feels more logical now that, that Nikki will do and I will do this, as separated co-custody parents and all that stuff. And that, we've even kind of gotten over that whole conventional, we got to stay married and we didn't even know how. And so much went down. And I showed that on the show too. And my part of that.
Co-parenting's a thing.
Co-parenting's a thing. So it was kind of like, okay, this is in my head. This is probably a good thing. Right. And so why does my heart still feel so crazy, And it was kind of funny because what really got me over some of that heavy last grief therapy around the divorce and the failure and the shame and all this stuff was I painted a world where you had 3 wives or 3 husbands. And I was like, if I lived in a culture where the first one was practice, romantic, Romeo, Juliet practice, right? To eventually mess up probably because you have a lack of maturity at that age and you're not going to make it through, right? If you do, then maybe you're soulmates, right? Or you're a miracle, right? Who knows, right? Well adjusted and well raised, who knows? But first one, that's that and it's acceptable.
Sure.
Second one, depending on how much your first relationship lasted, it's really about family. You're going to make children, right? And you're going to get those children birthed into the world. And then, once that's done, it's acceptable to say, okay, I'm now looking for my companion, partner, mate, perversion, right? And you would have the third one. And then if we lived in that world, I'd be one down. You know what I mean? I was like, I just got, and I got the kids out of the way. So I could even just, I could just have
right
one
next
more,
to the third one,
and just have your version, right? What you and Brandy have.
Look,
and it helped me get over those waves. But you see what I'm saying? And you had these extra marriages. You learned what you learned from them. Like you said, you believe in the universe and it did those for you. You love your children. You wouldn't have them any way different for them at all. And now you have Brandy and your children and those past experiences, and now all your future experiences to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Right?
But I mean, look, I think it's possible to have this before you get married.
Right. So of course, so it wasn't a marriage and the wedding.
Insist on this kind of dialogue. I truly believe that it's the core of any long-lasting relationship, successful relationship, like truly successful relationship. It's just talking. Right.
Dialogue.
It is on everything.
Would you say dialogue? You said it because, I always said I like it when a nugget comes out, right? And maturity's not quite that nugget because I don't feel, but it's there. It's an ingredient, right?
Listen, we always seem to hold something back from our partner. Now, you ask, how do you know that? Let's just say I was someplace where I was in a relaxed state of mind, and so was my partner. And it wasn't until we really reached that state of mind that a level of comfort between the two of us was our implicit trust suddenly was implicit. And the fact that I could say something to my partner without the ability to fear judgment on what I was going to say or reprisals because I was going to, step on an ego or anything like that. And then my partner actually have the ears to hear it in the spirit that it was actually given and said without filter in any way, which is super important to note because we filter everything that comes to us so that we put it into the context that makes us feel comfortable or what we want it to be in that moment. And so, and I think in our relationships, when we pull all the barriers down and the trust and comfort exists that I can actually say something to you without any reprisals, right? You're not going to hold it over my head for the next month, for the next 2 weeks. And you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Yes, I do.
And so if we can actually get to that point where you know that that thing that's
There's an
really
ease.
important to you, that's been weighing on you, that you really would like to share with your partner, the point that you can get yourself over that threshold and actually have that really important conversation, then once you've crossed that threshold, you can do it again and again and again and again. It gets so much easier. And so if you start that while you're dating, right, set a precedent. Then let me show you something. If you're not getting the reciprocation, then what makes you think you're going to get it in a marriage?
Exactly. Sure. Yeah. This is starts foundation.
You're building the foundation then. And I think if I had known that before I'd gotten married the first or second time, I think maybe my approach to those would have been a little different.
Interesting. It's coming to me, and it's maybe a good way to cap it off because it's definitely a negative for me. And about at ease. You just mentioned reaching a certain level of calmness after, all of it, all the veil was dropped, full. And the other one was you were saying no
What's
filters.
home?
So no filters. So now you got no filters. You're at ease, and you can be at ease at home.
It's home.
You have home. That's what it is. I wanted to get there. Yeah. So home. That's the relationship. That's the friendship.
If you can get home in your relationship, then everything else comes easy because life's problems will still come at you left and right just because that's life. But when you're suited up and you're on the same page, then it's how you deal with it that's completely different. And you're dealing with it in a way that, granted, in the moment, we're human, things happen, we say things, but still, you're able to deal with that better because now you're far enough down the timeline of your relationship and you've laid that foundation. You've spent the time in dialogue so that you are closer every time something pops up to already being on the same page so that you will more likely see the same reaction as one another and already be there. Not that you will have conflict. But again, I think if we focus on spending the time on communicating early, then I think we answer a lot of questions we need before we get to the end of that aisle to say I do.
I get it. And I think this, that's a great way to kind of tail out of this one. There's a lot there and a lot for other people to take with them. It's really cool that you shared your inner world and outer world with us.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Right. And then
Brandy will give you an earful next.
that's what I was going to say. Like, what do you think Brandy's going to say? Right. Like, I mean, just knowing her, well, what thing do you think she'll bring up in her time?
Well, so look, I don't think I know. My wife is extremely insightful and far more intuitive than I ever can be. And she's tapped in like that. So for her, I think you're going to hear some things that are very akin to, the things that I've said here, communication being the crux of all of it. I think she may talk about how she was raised and she hates the fact that people use their childhoods as.
Right.
So you may hear that as well.
Yeah.
But with respect to relationships, I think you're going to hear her echo the sentiment that, her and I, we've been together for a lifetime and many lifetimes, and will continue to be so.
We'll leave it at that. I hope you come back, buddy. I love you.
Will do.
Thanks.
Right back at you.
Bye. He makes messages. He makes messages. He makes messages. He makes messages. He makes messages.